Josh Hart basically calls the Chicago Bulls a small market team in a roundabout way. But I'm going to say why that isn't wrong and why the Chicago Bulls do operate like a small market team. And that's the biggest thing really hurting this team back. We're going to get to all that plus the mailbag right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Terry Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content. And so Josh Hart was asked if the NBA keeps small market teams down. And in response to that, Josh Hart said that no, and talked about the Chicago Bulls having won basically shit since in 10 years, and they're not a small market team. And it's like, damn. And it got me to thinking, right? Could I take issue with Josh Hart's comments, things like that? Yeah, I guess, but he's technically not wrong, right? The Bulls are a perfect example of a team that is in one of the largest markets in the country. And through their own bad decision-making, through their own cheapness in a lot of different ways, they are now set here in this place with this team where we do operate like a small market team. And the Bulls' mindset of being basically a small market team, let's keep in mind here, the Bulls are one of the most profitable teams in all of sports. We're not even just talking about the NBA. In all of sports, I think they're top 15 to 20 in every majorly owned sports team in the country. And so because of that, when you look at the Bulls and the things and this isn't just about paying the luxury tax, right? The Bulls are not only, we talked about it, 22 teams did not pay the luxury tax last season. And so I'm not even blaming just that on the Bulls, but I'm blaming how they go about their decision-making. This is not a team that is ever aggressive, right? This is a team that, we will let some of our own free agents go at times because of money. We're a team that has been very impatient. The Bulls are not a free agent destination, have never really been, right? We just have never been that team that has gotten really the big name free agents. We've gotten players on the back half of their career towards the end as they're declining, things like that, or players that are trying to prove that they could still, like Parker, to try to say that they could still stay in the league. But the Bulls have never truly gotten a marquee free agent, one of the top 3 free agents on the market. We just have not done that. Demar, Carlos Boozer, I believe Dennis Rodman was a trade. Somebody correct me on that if I'm wrong. But we've just never been that team. And because of that, it has put the Bulls in a place where we do operate like a small market team. And the small market mindset by the Bulls is the biggest issue in this. And I mean that they just do not operate like a team. Like, yeah, the Bulls, we sell out, right? Because the Bulls have a worldwide fan base and things like that. But even the fan experience, the Bulls don't provide a lot to that, right? They have the Bulls Summerfest, which is, if they have it this year, we'll be going into the 3rd year, which that hasn't even been officially announced yet. We don't know what's going on with Summerfest for the Chicago Bulls. Hopefully it does happen again. I'd love to be able to meet up with you guys again in person, but it just has not been. The Bulls don't operate. When you look at the Bulls of having the best, one of the biggest superstars ever in the game of basketball, Michael Jordan, and while they did use that to turn, the Bulls logo is recognizable across the world. People know what the Chicago Bulls logo is. That is why they sell the way they do. That is why the United Center is always packing. That's why we have one of the, if not the largest stadiums in the NBA. It's because of that, right? And those things we are on the back still of what that dynasty team built and what Jerry Krause was ever to build here with having a focus on winning. But the Bulls operating like a small market team, we aren't aggressive about putting a team out on the court. We never, and I don't really want the Bulls to make the flashy signings, right? I don't want them to bring, for example, Bronny James here to get LeBron here and then sell out. But I don't care about that. And that's why, even when Bulls fans nowadays say, let's bring Derrick Rose back, I look and say, what's the basketball sense in it? Let's make the basketball sense first. I'm over the vanity signings, right? And this is a team that will sell you on nostalgia as much as they can. They will sell you on the good times as much as they can to keep the eyes off of the lack of movement that we have here. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's just this. The Bulls do operate like a small market team. There's no way around it. And I think that Bulls fans, even the most lenient Bulls fans or the most apologistic Bulls fans as far as why this team doesn't spend money for real. Well, and again, I take that with a grain, right? We've only gone into the luxury tax one time in the history of the franchise, but we're always over the salary cap. We're considerably over the salary cap. At that, we just don't spend into the luxury tax. And so the Bulls don't go after star power. We don't really haven't developed a star since Jimmy Butler. We aren't a team that puts the focus on winning above all else, because this team still knows that because we are in the market that we are, we're still going to be super profitable even without winning. And that's the place where a lot of Bulls fans' frustration is really rooted in, is the fact that they know that this team is not going to change, or they fear this team is not going to change much unless they get lucky. And that's really we were lucky to get Michael Jordan. And then, yeah, it took Jerry Krause to be smart to build a team around Michael Jordan, and he did that. We were lucky to get Derrick Rose, and it took Paxson and Gar Forman to be smart enough to build the team around him that they did to give this team a chance. And then injuries, they plagued the team. Injuries and age when they eventually had to move on from some players. This team got lucky in drafting Jimmy Butler, but then wasn't smart enough to build a team around him. And you talked about going younger and more athletic. Like, when you look at it, this Bulls team, there's nothing about this team that screams big market. But if you know the city of Chicago, if you pay attention to the revenue, we are a very big market team. But we just don't operate like a big market team. We don't. And the Bulls can get as close to winning as they can. It doesn't seem like they will ever. They have not shown us as of yet be aggressive enough to solidify that winning, to actually make it a stretch to do some shit. And that's where it comes down to the frustration by Bulls fans that have been fans of this team for 20, 30, however many years. It's the frustration around that. It takes for the Bulls to really get lucky to do it. You saw how the New York Knicks, for example, they kept building, and they eventually got Jalen Brunson. And then once they got Jalen Brunson, it's been steady acquisition mode to keep filling out that team and the holes that they see on that team going forward to that point. And I'm not even just blaming this on just AK and Eversley. This is just something over the last few years of the Bulls. We aren't aggressive at all. We don't operate like a team that understands, hey, we're going to make money. This is still a team that first operates very much like a small business, in the fact that we got to get overhead first. We got to get it together. And, I had high hopes for AK. And like I said, I only give AK so much leniency in the fact that you accepted this job. You knew the limitations ownership was going to have for you when it came to spending. Yeah, it wasn't what you were used to in Denver. It's not what you're going to see a lot around the league. But the fact is that you accepted this position knowing the limitations, or you should have did your research, and now it's your job to fix this. Cook something up. I did a whole episode yesterday, and I talked about what the Bulls' priorities are going to be in free agency. And the first thing on the list was cap flexibility, just because I know this team. And that is going to be the first thing, is the flexibility with the cap. And they're not the only ones. Please, make no mistake about it. When I talk about these things, I'm not saying that like the Bulls are the only team that do it. No, it's just that's the team that I cover. That's the team that I care. That's the team that I talk about every single day for my life, is the Chicago Bulls. So yeah, you're damn right I'm going to talk about it and get frustrated by the way in place this team is. But when you hear things and see things like that the Bulls were the first thing that came to mind for Josh Hart when he talked about that we ain't won nothing in 10 years. So obviously that doesn't hold much weight. That's the exact quote. The Bulls are the ones that come to your mind on that. That says a lot about the look and the view on the Bulls around the league, in my opinion. When you have a role player, and a damn good role player, don't mean that derogatorily. We got to stop using role players derogatorily. But when you have Josh Hart, who is on the stage of the New York Knicks, and the first thing that comes to mind for him when he talks about teams to prove that small market teams aren't held back was the Chicago Bulls, I think that says a lot. Look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, for example, right? Yes, they were very smart in how they got a bunch of picks for trading out Russ and KD and eventually Chris Paul. Like, they just were smart, and they're reaping the benefits of that right now. You look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and what he turned into. Imagine had the Clippers held on to that, right? Or was it the Clippers? Maybe it wasn't the Clippers. Maybe it was. I don't remember where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was. First, make no mistake about it. Right now, it's early, I'm tired, and I'm frustrated with the Bulls. But when you look at that, like, OKC is a small market team. The Sacramento Kings, compared to the Chicago Bulls, are a small market, right? Yeah, they're in Cali, which automatically is going to inflate them to a certain degree, but still technically a small market team. So Yeah, and it was the Clippers. Shea did start out his rookie year was with Clippers. I thought so. I'm not always losing my shit. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, and it sucks that when you're a fan of a franchise that is in one of not only the largest cities in the country, but one of the best cities in the country, one of the cities that is going to rock with you. And all you got to do is put something out that can win. It just sucks, man. It just sucks, and that's kind of the place that it put me at. But let me know how you guys feel down below. And please, leave voicemails. I would love to hear how you guys feel about Josh Hart's comments, as well as the Bulls operating, kind of having the mindset of a small market team. I'd love to hear from you guys on that one. All right, let's move forward. Next one that we want to talk about, we're going to get into these. Before the voicemails, Julian Phillips will be representing the Chicago Bulls at the draft lottery going down tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern. We will be live for that, so make sure you guys stay tuned in for that. The draft lottery is going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Listen, let's hope the Bulls can get some lottery luck. We'll see how it shakes out for the Bulls. I think this is going to be, like I said, if the Bulls can get some luck in the lottery, I think it really does change some things. And I would love to see how that continues to develop for this team and what it turns into. But yeah, the Bulls getting some luck in the draft lottery could be a fun time for the Bulls and could really change the direction of the Chicago Bulls. So Julian Phillips, our rookie from last year, will be representing the Bulls in that. And we'll see if we can get some lottery luck. Hopefully he brings some for the Bulls. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into the voicemails. This one's for Mr. Homeboy.
What I was trying to say was, do you think that anybody on this team can, like, if you end up getting off of Caruso, that somebody on this team can step up and maybe get some of what Caruso is doing? And if you bring in somebody who's more offensive oriented, would maybe that help? Do you think that this Bulls team can survive, maybe get a little bit better on offense and suffer on defense? Or do you think that it's more realistic that Caruso could be a better three-point shooter? Because you've seen it this year where he stepped up on offense. So my question is, do you believe in Caruso being better on offense, or do you think that if you got rid of him that it would be so drastic that unless you're getting like a decent talent that it won't even make the same, we'll still be in the same place? That's my last thing.
Can anyone step in and give what Caruso is giving? I think it depends on how else you fledge out the team, because theoretically, if you do get a different starting shooting guard next to Kobe White, I would assume we can definitely replace that coming off the bench. But theoretically, I think we're all kind of hoping that if it's not Zach LaVine coming back, that we get a full season, kind of look at Ayo and Kobe being that starting backcourt to start the season. I think that not in the same ways, but maybe you're not the defensive prowess of Alex Caruso, the energy. It's not very many players that can bring that one player that can bring that. I think, if we do end up trading Alex Caruso, I think Javonte Green is a player that can bring a lot of kind of those similar things, but in different ways as well. But I think, the Bulls are maybe hoping that Julian Phillips can bring some of that in the season of being fully healthy. So maybe you're looking at like a combination of Julian and Javonte Green kind of bringing that for the Bulls next season. So maybe that's the case. But Alex Caruso is such a special player, man. And I think as hard as Alex Caruso works, he's going to be able to increase and develop his game as much as he really wants to. Looking at him being one of the few players that did exactly what he said he wanted to do in this offseason, and that is add the offense to go along with his defense. And he did that, shooting the highest volume of his career, the highest percentage of his career. Alex Caruso definitely turned that three-point shot into an absolute weapon for him last year. And you know what he brings defensively, deflections-wise, all that things, the momentum-changing plays that he makes. Alex Caruso is such a good player for this Bulls team, and I don't want to overlook Alex Caruso makes a huge impact for these Bulls, and I hope that happens. So I think he's going to keep refining this game. You guys know I'm in the camp where I would love to see the Bulls hold on to Caruso, but I think if you do move on from him, you're not necessarily looking for a player to just replace him. You're looking at the assets, things like that, and the Bulls are going to be a worse team I think if this offseason gets to the point where you're selling off Alex Caruso for first-round picks, that probably means that Zach's probably gone. It may even mean that DeMar is gone, or one of the two or both of them. So I think that the direction of the team is a lot different then. So you're not necessarily looking to be as competitive as before. We'll see what happens with that. We'll see. This is going to be a fun offseason to kind of watch how the maneuvers of the Bulls really take the team going into next season. All right, let's get into this next one. This one's from Reginald.
Hey, this is Reginald from Columbus, Georgia. I'd just like to say, when it comes to Demar's situation, about whether or not Bulls should possibly overpay to keep him, and what type of number the Bulls should offer. In my opinion, the Bulls should offer anywhere between $15 and $20 million a year. I don't think any other team can offer more than that. I mean, you got Philly with like 60 to 70 million in cap space, but they want someone young and who can fit into playing with Joel and Maxey, not someone who's going to be more strictly ISO ball type player. And you got a couple other teams like maybe Charlotte or Detroit, but that's not going to fit. Maybe OKC, but they're trying to get better and younger. They don't have to make deals to sign their young guys to extensions, so that's going to be problematic for them. And I think a lot of people forget that when the Bulls signed them to that 3-year, $84 million deal, that most of the analysts or whatever will talk about maybe he should sign like a $10 million mid-level exception, so that maybe he's going to have to come off the bench. I mean, even the Bulls said, like, yeah, we overpaid for him. I think no other team was offering any more than low 20s, so the Bulls paid $4 or $5 million extra to get him. And I don't think there's going to be a team out there who's going to say the money we didn't want to pay him 3 years ago when he was 31, we're not going to pay him when he's 35. No team's going to say that. So offer him a 2-year, $80 million deal is ridiculous to me. But if he can find a team that will give him more than 20, I probably just tell him, look, we can do a sign and trade, or if that's not your style, effectively service. But I just wouldn't pay more than just 15 to 20 million to trade, on a 2+1 deal. What's your take on that?
Yes, the Bulls did overpay for DeMar, according to what was rumored out there on the market the year that we did sign him. So that I think you're spot on with that one. Now, you said that Philly could be looking for younger players. I don't know if that's necessarily true, because one of the players that they have looked at the most or been rumored around the most to be interested in is Paul George, who, if I'm not mistaken, is the same age or maybe only a year younger than DeMar DeRozan. So I think that they're looking for, and keep in mind, and in saying this, and it's kind of how I always presented it, is DeMar DeRozan going to be number one on the Clippers board? I mean, on the 76ers board? No, I'm not saying that. I think Paul George and kind of other players are, but for a team then that only has 5 players under roster, they could be then pivoting and looking to pay a player like DeMar DeRozan to come to that team because, isolation, things like that. But I think that DeMar showed, at least last season, if he played a facilitating role at times and took a step back when Ayo and Kobe were get going. So I think he can do that same thing for Joel and Tyrese Maxey. And that team, honestly, when they do face some good half-court defense, may actually need a player like DeMar who can isolate, get to the free throw line and stuff like that. So, the 76ers are going to be used as a ploy for a lot of free agents. I think DeMar could be one of those. But I agree with you. I've talked about it. I don't want to see this Bulls team overpay just to keep DeMar. There is a value to keep DeMar on numbers and years and things like that, but I think at some point you got to rip the Band-Aid off and just go in a different direction rather than overpay to kind of stay, because that can hurt your team more long term. If this Bulls team is a team that makes the play-in or, for the next 3 years, whereas they would have just been a lottery team those 3 years outright and had worse picks, that's actually kind of better for your team in the long term. Yeah, it sucks that we'll be watching subpar seasons, but fuck, we've already been doing that for 10 years. So, it is what it is. There really is about the mindset. So, we'll see what happens there, Reginald. But great voicemail, great insight there, and you're spot on with the fact that the Bulls did overpay for DeMar when we signed him. Much more. Some outlets thought that DeMar would be lucky to get over the mid-level exception. The Bulls came in there with a much higher deal, but it's always that. The Bulls are always he's going to have more value to the Bulls as far as contract-wise than any other team. So we'll see where that's going to get us. All right, let's get into this next voicemail. The last voicemail, we got a text message after this. This one's from Vaughn.
What's up, Hayes? This is Vaughn. So I was listening to your video about the trade proposal for Zach to the Magic. I think I like the idea of swapping Zach for Jonathan Isaac. I think it works under the cap. I may be mistaken, but if they have to throw in Ingles, that works too. But I feel like we could get their Nuggets pick that they have, which is top 5 protected. I'm not sure if they can throw protection on top of that, maybe lottery protection on top of that, and send that to us. Jonathan Isaac for Zach, but I like the idea of that. The reason I also like Jonathan Isaac on this team, he's been pretty successful playing the 5 in the playoffs, but then I feel like even with his injury history, if you have someone like, draft a center, maybe Khalil, where if we stay at 11 or move down or whatever it is, the only bad thing is that, the only good thing would come from that is, our draft pick will get more playing time. So, I like the fit of Jonathan Isaac on the team, running with the bench at the 5, and then I also like the idea of letting DeMar walk in that situation. So you clear up Zach. You would save a lot of money off of that, maybe $20 million almost, and then letting DeMar walk. And then using that money to sign some depth pieces. I like the idea of having like a Kelly Oubre, to replace Demar at probably half the price that Demar might command. And then I also like the idea of going after another big, maybe a Obi Toppin, who's a restricted free agent, or a Jalen Smith. I would even like a Davis Bertans on this team, as a last resort option, just for some shooting. But I think that would be a solid team, that they could build out, just removing DeMar and Zach's money and, getting someone like Jonathan Isaac, drafting big, and then going after like a Kelly Oubre or Obi Toppin. But let me know what you think. All right, peace.
Okay, so Isaac for LaVine straight up would only work if the Magic are willing to basically absorb most of LaVine's contract into their cap space. If they want to kind of save some cap space to go after different things, they'll have to include another player. You mentioned Ingles. That is something that could work. So that's what it comes down to it. So, I do see it. And, maybe it's because I've been reading about it so much, but when you look at the Magic and how good they were defensively, but 22nd ranked offensively, there could be something to be made about bringing in a player like Zach LaVine offensively, and then to think your defensive system is good enough to kind of be okay with taking in. Zach is, once he's engaged, he's not a terrible defender either. So, those are things. Listen, I believe when there's enough smoke, there's some fire. There was so much talk about Zach in Detroit last season, and I was like, hey, would it make sense for Detroit, this, that? But ultimately, it seemed like that was the deal that was on the table, and reportedly, that would have been the deal that would have closed had Zach LaVine not opted for the optional surgery. So, if the Magic keep being mentioned, to me, that says that there's at least some mutual interest, or that people are hearing there's some mutual interest. Could be a ploy. There could be the Bulls leaking that, right? We don't know. But, the Magic could put a package together that's okay. Now, Jonathan Isaac, I love him as a defender. He still hasn't shown a huge ability to stay healthy, so definitely worried about that. The Bulls getting a heavily lottery-protected first seems like the best-case scenario for the Chicago Bulls, so we'll see what happens there. But, also the Bulls drafting the big man, I think, is something that almost has to happen. My personal opinion, but we'll see. But great voicemail, Vaughn. Great insight, as always, brother. Thank you for that. All right, let's get into the last mailbag today. This is actually a text message. This one says, mailbag from Shaq. We're reading this directly. What's up, Hayes? An interesting prospect the Bulls should be looking at is Tyler Smith from the Ignite. His potential as a 4-5 with two-way ability is very intriguing. I'm interested to know your thoughts on him. So you guys know I'll be getting deep in the weeds of draft prospects starting next week. After the draft lottery, that's always where I kick up my draft coverage. So be on the lookout for that. It's coming. But with that said, I think ultimately it comes down to this. Tyler Smith, as much as a lot of people have huge potential, and it's if the Bulls see that huge potential as something that they just don't want to miss out on. If this is a player that they believe in his potential, he has tons of potential as a 4. I think a small, not really technically a small ball 5, but he has to fill out his frame as well. He could play a 5 at the next level, a la like a Bam Adebayo, right? And it gives you flexibility in how you want to build your roster. The one problem is, and I think it was originally Winton that pointed this out, maybe it was somebody else. No, it was actually Steve-O. That not a lot of players from the Ignite have necessarily had the career so far that some people had hoped for him. So maybe there's something to be said there. But ultimately, you got to trust your scouting department. And Tyler Smith is somebody that has huge potential, and I will be covering him when I go in the weeds of the draft analysis. So make sure you guys stay tuned in for that. But all right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.